What we're about to share today is the story of a lawyer who forgot what justice truly means. It's a story about pride, about the fall of a man who thought he was bigger than the law, until one day, he stood in the same courtroom he used to command, this time as the one being judged. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to Sweet Justice for more powerful, real-life inspired courtroom stories. And tell us in the comments which country you're watching from. We love seeing our global family of truth seekers. The courtroom of Judge Harris was known for its calmness, a place where truth spoke louder than power, and where silence carried more weight than shouting. But that peace often shattered whenever Ethan Cole walked in. Ethan was not just any defense lawyer. He was the defense lawyer every rich client wanted. Sharp suit, perfect hair, a voice that could slice through a jury's hesitation like a blade. He had an uncanny ability to twist words, reshape facts, and turn guilt into innocence. At least that's what he was proud of. To him, the courtroom wasn't sacred. It was a stage, and he was the star. Your Honor, he would often say with a smirk, I know you like your order, but my client's freedom doesn't have time for patience. Judge Harris, and silver-haired, calm-eyed, a man who had served 30 years on the bench, would simply adjust his glasses, look over his file, and reply quietly, Mr. Cole, in this courtroom, justice doesn't rush for anyone. But Ethan didn't care. He thrived on attention. Cameras loved him. Journalists quoted his flashy lines. Clients lined up outside his office like fans waiting for autographs. One rainy morning, Ethan's assistant, a young woman named Claire, entered his office nervously. Sir, she said softly, we've received a new case. It's high profile. Ethan leaned back, lighting his cigar. High profile. My favorite flavor. It's Mr. Vincent, the construction magnate, she said. He's been accused of bribing city inspectors. They say he's paid off half the council. Ethan's smile widened. Good. Then he can afford my fee. He stood, straightened his tie, and declared, let's win this one. It's time to show Judge Harris what real power looks like. The first day of the trial drew a crowd. Media vans parked outside the courthouse. Reporters whispered, Ethan Cole's defending the untouchable Vincent. This'll be huge. When Ethan entered, every eye followed him. He didn't bow to the judge, didn't greet the opposing counsel. He just strutted straight to the defense table like a celebrity on a red carpet. Judge Harris raised an eyebrow. Mr. Cole, I trust you remember courtroom decorum? Ethan flashed his charming grin. Of course, Your Honor. Though I believe results speak louder than rules. A ripple of quiet disapproval passed through the audience. The judge didn't respond. He simply opened the case file. Throughout the first week, Ethan's arrogance grew. He interrupted witnesses. He rolled his eyes when the prosecution spoke. He even mocked the bailiff once for moving too slowly. And somehow, he always managed to make the crowd laugh. Every objection was a performance. Every pause, a dramatic beat. The young lawyers watching admired his brilliance. But the judge saw something else, disrespect, inching closer to destruction. One afternoon, during a key witness's testimony, Ethan snapped. The witness, a city inspector, was testifying about how Vincent handed him envelopes of cash. Ethan leaned forward and shouted, Oh, please! You're just another rat trying to save your tail. The courtroom gasped. The judge's gavel hit once, sharp and controlled. Mr. Cole, Judge Harris said calmly, you will not insult witnesses in my courtroom. Ethan folded his arms. Then perhaps, Your Honor, you should remind your witnesses not to lie under oath. Judge Harris's voice dropped lower. More dangerous. I remind everyone, including you, Mr. Cole, that the truth doesn't fear questioning, but arrogance fears accountability. For the first time, a flicker of unease crossed Ethan's eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it came. Later that evening in his office, Ethan poured himself a drink. He looked at his reflection in the window, confident, successful, untouchable. Then his phone rang. It was his client, Mr. Vincent. Ethan, the man's deep voice said, this case can't go wrong. You understand me? Ethan smirked. Relax, the prosecution's weak. I'll handle it. There are documents, Vincent continued. Documents you shouldn't let anyone see. Ethan frowned. What kind of documents? The kind that could destroy both of us. A silence. Then Ethan said, "Send them over. I'll take care of it." That night he opened the envelope. Inside were forged contracts, altered receipts, proof of years of corruption. Ethan's first instinct wasn't moral horror. It was calculation. How do I hide this? He turned off the lights, sat in the glow of his computer screen, and began altering files. Changing dates, erasing trails. He told himself it was strategy, not crime. I'm protecting my client. This is what lawyers do. But deep down, something inside him whispered, this isn't law anymore. This is manipulation. He ignored it. A week later in the courtroom, Judge Harris noticed something odd. The evidence from the defense was too clean, too perfect. He studied the papers through his glasses and quietly called a recess. As the room emptied, he looked at Ethan and said, "Mr. Cole, may I see you in my chambers?" Ethan followed, pretending confidence, though his heart thudded. Inside, the judge stood by the window, arms crossed. "Mr. Cole," he said softly, "I've known you for years. You're talented, but lately you're dangerous. I don't just mean to others. I mean to yourself," Ethan smirked. "Your concern is touching, Your Honor, but I don't need a sermon. I need a win." The judge turned, his calm eyes piercing. "Wins fade, Mr. Cole. Integrity doesn't." Ethan chuckled, grabbing his briefcase. "Integrity doesn't pay the bills, Judge." He walked out, leaving behind the faint echo of the judge's voice. "One day you'll learn. Respect isn't a rule. It's protection." That day wasn't far away because someone Ethan least expected had already begun uncovering what he'd done. And the next time he entered that courtroom, he wouldn't be standing behind the defense table. He'd be standing in front of it, facing judgment. The next morning, Ethan Cole walked into court wearing his most expensive charcoal gray suit, the one he called his armor. He believed appearances could win battles before words even started. And for a while, that had been true. But something felt different today. The air in the courtroom was heavy. The reporters weren't smiling. The prosecution lawyer, Ms. Taylor, wasn't intimidated. She sat calm, steady, like someone holding a secret she couldn't wait to reveal. Judge Harris entered the courtroom. His face was unreadable. "All rise," the bailiff's voice echoed. Everyone stood. Ethan barely lifted his eyes, only rising halfway. When they sat again, the judge began, "Mr. Cole, we're continuing the cross-examination of the city inspector." "You may proceed," Ethan smiled thinly. "Gladly, Your Honor." He turned toward the witness, adjusting his cufflinks like a performer checking his stage lighting. "So," Ethan said, pacing slowly, "you claim my client offered you money. But you took it, didn't you? Which makes you just as guilty." The witness shifted nervously. I reported it to the authorities later." "It was a mistake." Ethan leaned closer, lowering his voice. "A mistake? Or an opportunity to make yourself the hero while saving your own skin?" "Mr. Cole," Judge Harris said firmly, "tone down your aggression." Ethan didn't even look at him. "With respect, Your Honor." The judge's eyebrow rose. "You seem to misunderstand the word respect. Proceed carefully." A few chuckles rippled through the audience. Ethan's jaw tightened. He continued questioning, growing sharper, louder, crueler. But something was off. The jury wasn't reacting. The usual rhythm he controlled was gone. And then came the twist. Ms. Taylor stood and said, "Your Honor, the prosecution would like to submit new evidence." Ethan froze. "What evidence?" She handed over a thin folder. "A set of defense exhibits submitted last week. Except, Your Honor, these documents don't match the originals we subpoenaed from the city office." The judge's eyes lifted toward Ethan. "Mr. Cole, your response." Ethan laughed softly. "Objection, Your Honor. This is an absurd claim. Anyone could have altered those documents." "Indeed," the judge said quietly. "And that's what concerns me." He opened the folder, reading silently. The courtroom waited. After a long moment, Judge Harris placed the papers down. "Mr. Cole," he said, voice calm but heavy, "these discrepancies are not clerical errors. They suggest intentional tampering." Ethan's smirk faltered. "With all due respect, Your Honor, are you accusing me of—" "I'm not accusing you of anything." "Yet," the judge replied, "but I will be opening a parallel inquiry into the conduct of the defense." Court is adjourned until Monday. Outside cameras flashed wildly. "Ethan, did you forge evidence? Is this the end of your career?" He pushed through the crowd, shouting, "No comments!" His confidence had cracked. For the first time, his swagger looked forced. In his office, he slammed the door and shouted at his assistant. "Who leaked those files?" Claire flinched. "No one, sir. Maybe the prosecution found them another way." Ethan's voice rose. "You don't find things that don't exist." "Someone's sabotaging me." She hesitated, then whispered, "Sir, maybe you should just tell the truth." The silence that followed was colder than any accusation. Ethan turned slowly. "The truth doesn't win cases, Claire. Evidence does. But isn't the truth supposed to be the evidence?" She asked quietly. Ethan didn't answer. He walked away, closing the door behind him. That night, Judge Harris sat alone in his chambers reviewing Ethan's record. 28 victories in 3 years. Dozens of objections overruled, but also 6 contempt warnings, 4 witness complaints, and 2 disciplinary memos. The judge sighed. "A brilliant mind corrupted by arrogance," he murmured. He opened his drawer and pulled out an old letter. It was from Ethan years ago when he'd just passed the bar. "Thank you, Judge Harris," it read, "for inspiring me to fight for truth. Someday I hope to make you proud." The judge closed his eyes. "What happened to you, Ethan?" Monday came. The courtroom was silent as Ethan entered. No reporters shouting now. Whispers followed him instead. Judge Harris called the session to order. "Before we resume trial proceedings," he said, "there's a matter concerning ethical conduct of the defense counsel." Ethan stood. "Your Honor, I must object to this side investigation. It's unprofessional." The judge nodded calmly. "Noted. But the integrity of this court is not negotiable." Ms. Taylor approached with a small USB drive. "We have digital logs showing that the defense's evidence files were edited on Mr. Cole's office computer at 11:47 p.m. last Thursday." Ethan's throat went dry. "That's impossible," he stammered. "Someone else must have—" "Mr. Cole," the judge interrupted softly, "were you working alone that night?" Ethan hesitated. "Yes, but that doesn't mean—" The judge raised a hand. "No explanations yet. You'll have your chance." As the hearing continued, Ethan's confidence began to crumble. Every question from Ms. Taylor felt sharper. Every glance from the audience felt heavier. When Claire was called to the stand as a witness, Ethan's heart sank. "Miss Claire," the judge said gently, "you were Mr. Cole's assistant on the Vincent case, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor. Did you see him alter any evidence files?" She paused, eyes full of pain. "He told me to leave early that night. But the next morning, the files were different." "I'm sorry," Ethan whispered. "Claire." Her eyes filled with tears. "I warned you, Ethan. I told you to stop before it went too far." The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Judge Harris leaned forward. "Mr. Cole, this hearing isn't just about documents anymore. It's about integrity. Yours." Ethan looked down, his voice trembling for the first time. "Your Honor, I was only doing my job." The judge's tone hardened. "No, Mr. Cole, you were doing something else. And this court will decide what that is." When the gavel struck, the sound echoed like thunder. "Court is adjourned until Wednesday," Judge Harris said. "Mr. Cole, prepare to answer for your actions." As everyone rose, Ethan stayed seated. His reflection in the polished table no longer looked like the confident lawyer he'd been, but a man standing at the edge of collapse. And for the first time, he realized the judge wasn't his enemy. His arrogance was the day of the ethics hearing arrived. The courtroom, usually filled with murmurs and chatter, was heavy with tension. Reporters lined the back rows, cameras forbidden but pens flying furiously. Ethan Cole, once a symbol of success and arrogance, now sat quietly at the defense table, no longer representing a client but himself. He wasn't smiling. His perfectly combed hair was slightly disheveled, his tie crooked. For the first time in years, Ethan looked human. Judge Harris entered, robes flowing like a shadow of judgment. "All rise," everyone stood. Ethan rose too, this time fully with trembling hands. "You may be seated," the judge said, settling behind his bench. He looked at Ethan with something between disappointment and pity. "Mr. Cole," he began, "this hearing concerns allegations of evidence manipulation, contempt of court, and professional misconduct. You will have the opportunity to respond. But remember, Honesty here will determine not only your sentence but the rest of your life. Ethan nodded weakly. Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Taylor stood. Her voice was steady, controlled, the voice of a professional who knew justice was close. Your Honor, the prosecution will present 3 pieces of evidence proving intentional falsification of court documents by Mr. Cole. She turned to the first screen, where a projection appeared. Timestamps, computer logs, and access records. These digital logs confirm that the evidence folder was modified from Mr. Cole's personal device on the night of June 11th. At 11:47 p.m., metadata analysis confirms his credentials were used. Ethan clenched his fists beneath the table. The second screen lit up, CCTV footage from the firm's hallway. A lone figure, Ethan, entering his office, carrying files, staying until after midnight. The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder, and then came the final blow. Ms. Taylor turned to the judge. And lastly, Your Honor, a voice message retrieved from the firm's system. She pressed play. Ethan's own voice filled the courtroom, sharp and impatient. I don't care what you think, Claire. Just fix it. The original numbers don't help our case. Change them and upload before morning. The sound cut off, leaving an echo of betrayal. Claire sat in the witness box, tears running down her cheeks. She didn't look at him. Ethan's throat burned. He wanted to explain, to twist the truth like he always did. But this time, there was no escape. Judge Harris leaned forward. Mr. Cole, you may speak. Ethan stood slowly, voice shaking. Your Honor, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was desperate. My client was innocent and I... The judge's gavel struck lightly. Stop. Mr. Cole, your client was not on trial here. You are. And innocence cannot be built on lies. Ethan's composure finally broke. I worked my whole life for this, Your Honor. I came from nothing. I clawed my way up while others mocked me. And you expect me to throw it all away over one mistake? Judge Harris's tone turned cold. This wasn't one mistake. This was a pattern of arrogance, of deceit, of contempt for the very system that gave you success. Ethan's voice cracked. I just wanted to win. And that, the judge said quietly, is why you lost everything. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of the ceiling fan spinning slowly above. Judge Harris looked down, reading from his notes. Ethan Cole, this court finds you guilty of tampering with evidence, obstruction of justice, and repeated contempt of court. I hereby order a 5-year suspension from the bar, effective immediately. Furthermore, due to your actions' impact on a pending criminal case, this matter will be referred to the District Attorney for criminal review. The words hit like bullets. 5 years. Career destroyed. Reputation gone. The gavel came down. Bang! This court is adjourned. Ethan didn't move. He couldn't. His eyes were fixed on the wooden desk where years of victory had once felt so certain. Reporters surged forward as the bailiff cleared the room. Ethan, do you regret what you did? Do you have anything to say to Judge Harris? He didn't answer. His lips moved, but no words came. Then as the crowd dispersed, Judge Harris remained seated watching him. When everyone else had gone, he called quietly, Mr. Cole. Ethan turned slowly. Do you remember what you told me when you first passed the bar? The judge asked. Ethan nodded faintly. That I'd make you proud. The judge's eyes softened. And you still can, someday. But pride begins with humility. Go find that before you ever step in my courtroom again. Ethan swallowed hard. Yes, Your Honor. He turned and walked out of the courtroom, the echo of his footsteps following him like the ghosts of every lie he'd ever told. Outside, rain had started to fall. The gray clouds hung low over the courthouse dome, and the flag behind the judge's window fluttered weakly in the wind. Ethan stood on the courthouse steps, watching the city blur through the rain. For the first time, there were no cameras, no flashing lights, no applause. Just silence. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled note, the one he'd written years ago when he first dreamed of becoming a lawyer. Truth is my weapon. Justice is my goal. His hand trembled as he read it. He laughed bitterly, then whispered, Somewhere along the way, I forgot both. The rain washed over his face as he walked away, not toward another case, but toward redemption. The world moved on, as it always does. But Ethan Cole remained stuck in the shadow of his downfall. He'd lost his firm, his clients, and the admiration of a city that once whispered his name with respect. Now he lived in a small apartment on the east side, the kind of place where the sound of traffic never stopped, and the walls seemed to echo with regret. He worked nights at a small legal aid center, unpaid, unofficial, just helping others with paperwork and advice. It wasn't glamorous, no tailored suits, no courtroom victories, but for the first time, Ethan was doing law for the right reason. He began counseling young men who couldn't afford attorneys, helping them understand their rights. And every time one of them thanked him, truly thanked him, something inside Ethan began to heal. One morning, nearly a year later, he received a letter. The return address, District Court of New Haven. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a summons, not a punishment this time, but a request. Mr. Ethan Cole is hereby invited to appear before Judge Harris for a professional review hearing. He thought it was a joke. But it wasn't. After all this time, the judge wanted to see him again. That Friday, Ethan walked into the same courthouse where his career had ended. But this time, he wasn't wearing arrogance. He wore humility. A simple gray suit, no tie, no swagger. As he entered, people turned, recognizing the once famous lawyer who had fallen from grace. But there was no mockery this time, only quiet curiosity. He stepped into Courtroom 3, Judge Harris's courtroom. The same gavel, the same seal, the same air of solemnity. The difference was the man standing before it. "All rise," the bailiff called. Judge Harris entered, older, perhaps even a bit grayer, but still carrying the same commanding presence. Everyone sat. Ethan stood alone. "Mr. Cole," the judge said, scanning the papers before him, "you've been suspended from the bar for 1 year. During that time, you voluntarily assisted at community legal centers and participated in rehabilitation and ethics training. Do you have anything to say before I give my decision?" Ethan took a breath. "Yes, Your Honor, I do." He stepped forward, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "When I stood in this courtroom a year ago, I was a man who thought he knew everything. I believed winning was all that mattered, but losing everything taught me what real justice means." He glanced at the rows of people sitting behind him. Families, defendants, young lawyers. "I met people who never had a voice, who never got their day in court because people like me didn't care enough to fight for them. I used to think justice was about power, but it's not. It's about compassion." He paused, eyes glistening. "I don't ask for forgiveness, Your Honor. I just ask for a chance to make things right." The courtroom was silent. Even Judge Harris, known for his stoic demeanor, took a long moment before speaking. He leaned back, fingers resting on his gavel. "Mr. Cole," he said, "you were one of the most promising lawyers I'd ever seen, and one of the most reckless. You disrespected this court, the law, and yourself. But," he paused, "redemption isn't earned through perfection. It's earned through humility. And from what I've seen, you've taken your fall as a lesson, not a sentence." Ethan swallowed hard. Judge Harris looked down, signed a paper, and raised his eyes. "Effective immediately. Your license to practice law is reinstated, under probationary supervision for 2 years." Gasps filled the room. Ethan's mouth fell open. "Your Honor." "Thank you." The judge raised a hand. "Don't thank me, Mr. Cole. Thank the man you've become. I'm only giving him back the chance the old one wasted." A small smile crossed Ethan's face, genuine, humble. "Yes, Your Honor. I won't waste it again." After the hearing, Ethan walked out into the courthouse hallway, the same hallway he'd once strutted through with arrogance. But now the light felt different, brighter, warmer. Outside, a group of young interns recognized him. One of them, a nervous-looking law student, approached him. "Mr. Cole, sir, I just wanted to say, I studied your old cases in class, and even though things went wrong, you inspired me to study law. I hope one day I can argue a case like you." Ethan smiled gently. "You'll do better," he said. "Just remember, winning doesn't matter if you lose your soul doing it." The young man nodded. Ethan patted his shoulder and walked away. Weeks later, Ethan reopened a small firm, but not the kind filled with marble desks or polished brass plates. It was a modest office near the courthouse, shared with a few other reform-minded lawyers. A sign outside read, "Cole and Partners, Justice for All." On the wall above his desk hung a framed quote, handwritten on his old notepad. "Truth is my weapon. Justice is my goal. He finally understood it, and sometimes when he walked past the courthouse steps, he'd glance up at Judge Harris's window. He'd smile, not in pride but in gratitude, because that courtroom didn't destroy him. It saved him. Sometimes life humbles you not to break you, but to rebuild you. Respect isn't demanded, it's earned, and even the proudest hearts can find their way back, if they're willing to bow before the truth.